Hey there.
Mine. Alright gamers, let's be real. Postal set the bar for crazy, over-the-top violence in video games. But believe it or not, some games actually went further. Yeah, they looked at Postal and said, "Cute, hold my chainsaw." From banned games to ones that made rating boards lose their minds, today we're diving into 12 violent video games worse than Postal. Some are gory, some are disturbing, and some are so wild you'll wonder how they ever got made. We'll talk about what makes each one brutal, what players thought, and why people still play them. So buckle up, maybe grab a snack, but not during the gory parts, and let's get started. Manhunt 2, alright. Starting strong with one of Rockstar's most infamous titles, Manhunt 2. If you thought GTA was edgy, this game is like GTA's evil twin locked in a basement. You play as Daniel Lamb, a guy who wakes up in a mental asylum with no memory, and let's just say his therapy sessions involve a lot of sharp objects. The whole game is about sneaking around and brutally killing enemies using whatever's lying around. Plastic bags, crowbars, power tools. It's all about stealth executions, and the camera doesn't exactly look away. When the first version came out, it was so violent the ESRB slapped it with an adults-only rating, basically the death sentence for console games. The UK's film board refused to even rate it, which meant it couldn't legally be sold there. Rockstar had to blur out executions and tone things down just to release it. Players who like the game praise its tense atmosphere, the nerve-wracking stealth, and the way the story explores a broken psyche. But critics, oh, they were not having it. Many called it senseless, gross, and straight-up disturbing. Still, it's got a cult following now because it pushed the boundaries of what a horror stealth game could be. Fans argue the game is a commentary on media violence and voyeurism, that it's forcing you to confront the ugliness we sometimes ask entertainment to hide. Let's be real though, this one's not for the faint-hearted.
Come on, you fucking parasites. The death is waiting. You've got a lesson to learn.
Hatred. Alright, next up, hatred. This one's a lot. Imagine a game that's literally about being the villain. You play as a dude known only as the antagonist, and your one and only goal is to go on a killing spree against innocent civilians. That's it. No twist, no redemption arc. Just nihilism in a trench coat. The developers said it was meant to be a reaction against political correctness in games, but critics called it what it is, a mass murder simulator. Steam actually removed it from Greenlight at first, but later put it back after public backlash. When it finally released, it came with an adults-only rating in the US gameplay-wise. It's a twin-stick shooter, simple mechanics, black and white visuals, and a lot of blood. Some people said it's trying to make a point about violence in games by being over the top, while others said it's just violence for violence's sake. Players who tried it mostly said the same thing. Shocking for a few minutes, but it gets repetitive fast. The game doesn't offer a lot of narrative cushion, so players who streamed the game or watched clips often did so out of morbid curiosity. The controversy kept it in the spotlight more than the gameplay did. It's one of those titles that you play once, go, "What the hell was that?" and never touch again. Soldier of Fortune 2, Double Helix. Now, Soldier of Fortune 2 looks like a normal military shooter at first glance. Missions, guns, explosions, all the usual stuff. But here's the thing, this game had a realistic damage system that let you literally shoot off specific body parts. Yeah, I'm talking about the Ghoul 2.0 engine. It divided the human body into about 36 zones, meaning a single bullet or shotgun blast could cause anatomically explicit damage. You could blow off limbs, carve holes in torsos, and watch enemies react realistically to where they were shot. The gore looked detailed and looked deliberate, and this medical level attention to where you hit the body was part of the attraction for players who enjoyed hyper-realistic shooter physics. Back in 2002, that was cutting edge and kinda terrifying. Critics were split. Some praised the visceral realism and satisfying lethality. Others said the damage model bordered on gratuitous, especially when the aim seemed to be, how graphically can we animate a chest cavity? Many countries either censored or banned it because of the graphic gore. Players loved the mission variety and fast-paced gameplay though, and let's be honest, part of the appeal back then was seeing how real the game looked. It's one of the first FPS games to push the envelope of realism, and in doing so, it opened a whole new debate. How real is too real? Even today, fans remember it as the shooter that dared to make bullets anatomically accurate. Madworld. Alright, time for something different. Madworld. Unlike most of the games on this list, this one actually looks like a comic book came to life. The whole world is black and white, except for the bright red blood splashing across the screen. The story places you in a dystopian game show city where violence is televised entertainment. You play Jack, a man in a world where style matters as much as the stain on the pavement. The game's unique visual treatment makes violence both grotesque and cartoonishly stylish. It's not realistic in the Soldier of Fortune sense. Rather, it's a deliberate cartoon of violence. It's part death game, part reality show, and completely bonkers. You use chainsaws, spiked bats, street signs, basically anything you can grab, to take out enemies in gloriously over-the-top fashion. What makes Madworld so wild is how it balances pure chaos with humour. The announcers make dark jokes while you're fighting, and it's all so exaggerated it's almost cartoonish. But don't let that fool you. This game still got banned in countries like Germany for being too violent. Players loved it for being creative, stylish, and unapologetically fun, and for its fluid combat and inventive kills. Critics said it was a breath of fresh air in a sea of gritty realism. Downsides? The Wii controls sometimes felt limited compared to more hardcore action platforms, and the game's novelty could wear thin over long sessions. Still, it's a great reminder that not all violent games are dark and depressing. Some just want to paint the town red, literally. Carmageddon. Now, let's rewind to the 90s for Carmageddon. It's a racing game, sort of. You can win races by finishing laps, sure, but the real way to score points? Running over pedestrians. Yup, that's the whole gimmick. The game's tagline might as well have been speed kills, because that's exactly what you do. Back then, this idea was shocking. The devs openly admitted the idea was partly to make the game stand out and partly to court controversy. The result was both. In the late 90s, the game was banned or refused classification in multiple countries. Other countries replaced pedestrians with zombies or robots just to make it more acceptable. The debate around Carmageddon is interesting because it shows how context matters. Pixelated silliness gets judged differently than photorealistic nastiness, and yet the moral question remains the same. Are we okay with a game that normalizes hitting people with cars if it's just a game? Underneath the chaos, though, it's actually a solid racing game with fun car combat mechanics. The vehicles have personality, the tracks are wild, and the whole thing has a ridiculous sense of humor. Players who grew up with it remember it fondly, not just for the controversy, but for how unapologetically silly it was. The graphics look goofy today, but at the time, this game was pure madness. If GTA had a cousin who failed driving school and got banned from every city, it'd be Carmageddon. Condemned. Criminal Origins. Okay, so Condemned. Criminal Origins is a different kind of violent. It's not about big explosions or blood fountains. It's about how real violence feels. You play as Ethan Thomas, an FBI agent tracking serial killers. The catch? You spend most of the game using pipes, axes, and whatever junk you can find to fight off deranged enemies in dark, claustrophobic spaces. That proximity makes each strike feel heavy and consequential. The sound design makes every hit feel heavy, wet, and uncomfortably real. The camera, the sound design, and enemy reactions combine to make fights feel like real scraps, rather than stylized set pieces. It's one of those games where the violence isn't fun. It's tense. You're scared. You're desperate. And when you finally hit someone, it's all about survival. That's why it hit so hard, no pun intended. Critics praised Condemned for atmosphere, sound, the way it made violence feel ugly and immediate, the story, and even the realistic melee combat. On the other hand, complaints tended to focus on linearity and limited variety. Players loved the creepy vibe, though some said it got too repetitive. Still, Condemned proved you don't need buckets of blood to make violence disturbing. Sometimes, it's about how close the camera gets to your face. Agony. Oh boy, Agony. Even the title warns you. This one takes place in the most gruesome version of hell you've ever seen. The art team leaned hard into grotesque, often sexualized body horror, naked figures, distorted limbs, and scenes designed to unsettle. And you're a tortured soul trying to escape while surrounded by twisted demons and nightmarish landscapes. The game's claim to fame: pure, unfiltered shock value. There's nudity, gore, torture, and imagery that would make even Silent Hill blush. The developers actually had to censor parts of it to even release the game, and then later dropped an unrated version that put all the disturbing stuff back in critics, and many players slammed the game, not only for its crude sexualization of suffering, but also for technical problems and gameplay that didn't match the ambition of its visuals. Some outlets accused Agony of dehumanizing women and flirting with misogynistic imagery. Others pointed out that the game's shock value sometimes crossed the line into tastelessness without delivering a strong narrative or mechanical payoff. Fans of extreme horror defended it as art, like a visual descent into madness. Others said it's just edgy for the sake of being edgy. Either way, it's unforgettable. You play Agony once, then you spend a few minutes staring at your screen, wondering what you just saw.
Fuckhead!
No More Heroes. Alright, time for something with a bit more flair. No More Heroes. This one's a Suda 51 classic, so you already know it's going to be weird, funny, and full of blood. You play Travis Touchdown, a wannabe otaku who wins a lightsaber in an online auction, yes, really, and decides to become a professional assassin. The game is basically a ladder of boss fights, each one more ridiculous than the last. Each duel ends with flamboyant finishing moves and on-screen blood fountains that are cartoonish more than realistic. It's so over the top that it's honestly hard to take seriously, and that's kind of the point. The Wii motion controls let players enact sword slashes and strikes, which made the violence feel visceral, but also theatrical. Reviews praised the game for its style, storytelling voice, and the sheer joy of its absurd set pieces. Parents' guides warned of dismemberment and heavy blood. It's not subtle. The downside is that beneath all the attitude, the game's structure can feel repetitive. You're often doing similar assassination missions. Nonetheless, critics praised it for being creative and hilarious, and fans love it for its personality, the punk rock tone, the weird jokes, the self-awareness. It's violent, yeah, but it's the kind of violence that winks at you while doing it. No More Heroes is proof that violence can be ridiculous, stylish, and fun if you lean into the absurd. Lucius II. Okay, now this one's creepy for a different reason. Lucius II puts you in the shoes of a little boy who just happens to be the Antichrist. Yeah, you're basically a tiny Damien from The Omen, using psychic powers to kill people in creative accidents. You can set traps, mess with the environment, or use telekinesis to make people meet their gruesome ends. The whole idea is you're blending horror with puzzle gameplay, but with a seriously dark twist. Critics weren't super impressed with the mechanics. It's a bit buggy, and sometimes the kills don't go as planned. But for some players, the grotesque novelty of directing murders as an unwitting child is the selling point. Critics argued the game crosses a line because of how it sexualizes and weaponizes a child's body and agency in service of horror set pieces. Defenders contend it's a classic horror trope, child as vessel for evil, and that the supernatural framing creates fictional distance. Audience reactions are mixed. Some find the premise brilliantly unsettling, others find it ethically uncomfortable and poorly executed on a gameplay level. Either way, it's definitely one of the strangest, darkest games you can play, and yeah, you'll feel weird about it. Outlast. Whistleblower. Next up, Outlast. Whistleblower, one of the scariest DLCs ever made. If you thought the original Outlast was bad, this one takes it to another level. You play as Wayland Park, the whistleblower who exposes the horrors inside Mount Massive Asylum. What follows is a nightmare of torture, cannibalism, and some very disturbing scenes involving body horror and sexual violence. This game doesn't give you weapons, just a camera with night vision. That's it. You're defenseless, which makes every violent encounter even more terrifying. Content guides and trigger lists for the DLC warn about sexual violence, body horror, and torture scenes. Not the sort of thing you play as background noise. Critics mostly praised Whistleblower for tight pacing, atmosphere, and how it delivered emotional and visceral terror, though some players found certain scenes too disturbing and argued the game leaned on shock tactics. The game's success lies in its craftsmanship. Sound design, level layout, and the art of concealment make the violence horrifying because you are made to feel tiny and helpless. Audience reviews show a split between horror fans who hail it as a high point of survival horror and casual players who walked away and avoided it. Players called it one of the most disturbing horror games ever made, and not in a fun, scary way. It's uncomfortable. It's supposed to be, and that's why it's so effective. If you ever wanted to know what it's like to be trapped in a horror movie where everyone's lost their minds, Whistleblower delivers that experience perfectly. Just maybe don't play it at night. Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat has always been synonymous with finishing moves, but the 2011 reboot, often called Mortal Kombat 9, renewed the franchise's reputation as a provocateur. This reboot brought the franchise roaring back, and with it came the most detailed, over-the-top fatalities ever made. X-ray moves show bones cracking, organs exploding, and spines snapping, all in slow motion. The game's fatalities and X-ray attacks are so graphically explicit that some regions reacted by banning or censoring parts of the game. It's exactly what it is. It's campy, it's dramatic, and it's all about the spectacle. The violence isn't meant to be realistic. It's a comic book on steroids. Players loved it for reviving classic characters and bringing back the fun of local multiplayer. Critics praised the fighting system, saying it finally balanced depth with accessibility. Sure, it's brutal, but it's also kind of hilarious when someone gets punched through their own skull. This game didn't just survive controversy, it thrived on it. The game's ongoing cultural footprint is part of why it belongs on this list. Mortal Kombat isn't just violent, it's iconic for being unrepentantly so.
The old New York is waiting just below the surface. There's nothing to help you when the darkness falls. You're laid open so the world can rummage in your guts.
The Punisher, 2004, and finally, The Punisher. You play as Frank Castle, Marvel's ultimate anti-hero who believes justice means doing horrible things to bad guys. The game's big hook, interrogations. You capture enemies and use the environment to torture them for info, dangling them over piranha tanks, feeding them to electric eels, that kind of thing. It was so graphic that the ESRB almost gave it an adults-only rating, until the devs turned the torture scenes black and white to tone them down. Critics appreciated that the game largely captured the grim, uncompromising feel of the comics, and praised its combat and narrative beats. But common complaints included repetitive design and that the heavy focus on brutal interrogations raises real ethical questions. Fans who loved the comic's dark tone enjoyed the moral grey area. The satisfaction of brutal justice is part of the fiction's appeal. They loved the grit. It felt like a proper Punisher story, dark, grim, and unapologetic. This one's interesting because it made players question their own comfort zone. You're the hero, sure, but what you're doing is, well, not heroic. It's one of those rare games that makes you stop mid-play and think, wait, am I the bad guy here?
Another souvenir.
Come here.
All I wanted was to build a sandcastle.
Marvelous verdict. And there you have it. 12 games that managed to outdo Postal in pure shock value. Some are gory, some are weird, and some are just trying way too hard to make you squirm. But here's the thing, violence in games isn't just one thing. Sometimes it's there to make you laugh like Madworld. Sometimes it's there to scare the life out of you, like Outlast. And sometimes it's just there to make a point, you know, like Hatred maybe. These games show that violence in gaming can be art, commentary, or just good old-fashioned chaos. depending on how you handle it. So, which one freaked you out the most? Drop your pick in the comments below. Personally, I'm still recovering from Agony. If you liked this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe for more wild gaming lists, and maybe play something peaceful tonight, like Stardew Valley or Tetris, You've Earned It.